Hello, welcome back to the channel. It's me, Emmy the Cat Lady, and we're back to the Vault Tech series today, where we're going to be discussing the three main vaults that are centred in the TV show on Amazon Prime. We do need to talk about them together as they form part of one big vault system. So I can't use any footage from the show because of copyright issues and things, so we're just going to take a walk through the Mojave while we talk about what happened there. So Vault 33, where we open in the TV show, is located under LA close to Santa Monica, and the other two vaults, 31 and 32, must be nearby. Although we don't really know exactly where. They have to be under the kind of Los Angeles area somewhere, and each of the three vaults is connected by tunnels and the smaller version of the cog-shaped doors that you see in the vaults typically. So there would be regular kind of contact between the vaults, wasn't allowed, but there was the option for trade and aid to be given from one vault to another if necessary. So Vault 32 and 33 would appear to be control vaults that worked as intended. They've got an indoor farm area and everybody's working together to maintain the vault and learning all the skills that they need to keep the vault running, which is great. And the residents believed that Vault 31 was the same, even if the mashed potatoes were a little better. They were told that they were waiting for Reclamation Day, where they were going to leave the vault, go and save America and repopulate the surface. So in order to introduce genetic variation, every 3 years the vaults would trade people for seeds and machine parts with inter-vault marriages. And this was to prevent too much incestuous breeding, basically, for obvious reasons. It's not long-term sustainable practice to fool around with one's cousin, after all. But Vault 31's true nature is revealed in the final episode of the TV show, when Norm has discovered a pattern and he decides to contact the overseer of Vault 31 and go there to find out the truth. And that's where he meets the Roomba Robo-Brain that houses the brain of Bud Askins, the chairman of Vault Tech, and a bunch of people that have been cryogenically frozen. So these are Bud's Buds, which is his junior executives that he spent years grooming for this particular experiment. They were created to be the overseers of tomorrow and the best management for humanity, at least in Bud's mind. So they're kind of regularly thawed out one at a time and sent off to the other vaults to become the overseers, and they all push the narrative that, you know, when things look grim, you need to vote for Vault 31, and that's something that was perpetuated over the years as well. So the idea was to create a population of loyal Vault-Tec employees that would rule over the wasteland and take charge of the world after it had all gone to hell. So the other two vaults, Vault 32 and Vault 33, the idea behind them was to basically be breeding stock, to, you know, not to put too fine a point on it, it was to be breeding stock for these executives, and so that they could continue to breed better and better managers. So there's a little bit of kind of eugenics going on there as well, which is not great, but they obviously needed to maintain a population of people. So the Vault 31 residents did basically keep people believing that they were the best leaders and the best qualified to be the overseers, so they were always elected. And this includes Betty Pearson and Hank McLean, Lucy's father, and Steph Harper, who are all from Vault 31. And you notice that when they decide to repopulate Vault 32, it's Steph Harper that is picked to be the overseer of the new and improved Vault 32. So it seems that in about 2294, so 2 years before the TV show is set to take place, that the Vault 32 residents discovered the truth about 31, and they found out what the big secret was. So they devolved into civil war. The overseer was killed, and basically everybody else was killed off as well. So Bud Askins decided to cover this up. He told Hank that the overseer had died, but didn't tell him anything else. So they didn't know that Vault 32 had been completely wiped out. And what that did was that let Lee Moldaver get into the vault to set up the raider attack that we see in the first episode on Lucy's wedding day, using Rose McLean's Pip-Boy to gain access to the vault. So Rose was Hank's wife and Lucy and Norm's mother, and she realised that there was something drawing water from the water supplies from the surface, and that's how she discovered that society was already in the process of being rebuilt on the surface without vault tech. People were still there, and they were still they were still functioning, and there was a society developing. So eventually she, after a disagreement with her husband, decided to leave, and she took the 2 kids with her, and they ended up in Shady Sands, which by that point was a bustling and busy city at the heart of the NCR, with a population of about 34,000 people. But Hank eventually followed, took his kids back to the vault, and then nuked Shady Sands. We don't really know exactly how, but it wouldn't surprise me that Vault-Tec had access to something like that would allow him to do such a thing, which we'll get into properly in a little bit. But a lot of people question that the Master and his super mutants in the Unity didn't discover the vaults 31 to 32 and 33, that he would have known about them, because these vaults are quite close in proximity to the LA Boneyard and to where the cathedral was located. It's not really explained, but there was a comment left by Jesse Heinig, who posted on the Modifius Discord that perhaps the vaults were better hidden and protected, with information about their location being hidden. And that makes sense to me, because Bud is clearly pretty high up in Vault-Tec's power structure, and this was his pet project, was this vault trio that would cooperate to create the best managers ever for the future of Vault-Tec ruling the wasteland and ruling the world. So it makes sense that he'd have been able to easily have the vault locations hidden, not mapped, or even that publicly known about. So potentially there would have been a sort of secrecy waiver for the people that got picked to be the first residents of Vault 32 and 33, and that he could have not had the locations publicly known or recorded anywhere. It obviously doesn't kind of fit with the door being visible on the surface when Lucy leaves, but it's entirely possible that things have changed a lot since the events of Fallout, and people are still launching nukes and throwing bombs at each other. That the structure that was above the vault entrance could have been destroyed at a later date. So it's certainly a possibility, but certainly the existence of these vaults and the location of them could have easily been hidden by Vault-Tec. For the same reason that the location of Vault 112 in the Capital Wasteland is well hidden, because that was Stanislaus Braun's pet project and he was their chief scientist, so they would have let him basically do whatever he wanted to do and to hide the location of the vault and things if that's what he wanted to do. So it would make sense to me that the reason that the Master didn't discover these vaults was purely because it was well hidden and well protected by Vault-Tec, because this was their junior executives, their employees directly, that they would want to keep around and not let harm come to them. So it might have been offered much better kind of security compared to some of the other vaults in the area, where the super mutants did then get pure humans to be used and to be inducted into the Unity. So that would be my kind of theory, and that's what one of the people behind the story has suggested as well. Someone that was involved in the making of the early Fallout games has suggested that might be the reason. So makes sense to me anyway. So while at first we see that Vault 33 seems to be just one of the control vaults where everything's normal, there's no horrific experiment, people aren't getting turned into super mutants or told to sacrifice somebody every single year or everybody will die, anything like that. Everything's just functioning as normal. And every 3 years they have this trade with the other vaults to swap people around and to trade for seeds and parts and that kind of a thing. But what it really was to raise breeding stock and give Vault-Tec full control of the post-war world, which is what we know Vault-Tec really wanted. Was they wanted to have the monopoly on everything after the bombs, because by that point everybody was kind of pretty sure that the nuclear war was inevitable. So Barbara Howard does state that Vault-Tec is prepared to drop the bomb themselves. I don't see that as her confirming the long-held fan theory that it was Vault-Tec that dropped the first bombs. There's no official confirmation that is what happened. But what it does tell us is that Vault-Tec were prepared to do that, and they were prepared to take that action if they decided that was what was going to be necessary for them to get the full monopoly on the end of the world that they wanted to achieve. So it does imply that Vault-Tec has access to nuclear weapons and the capacity to use them. It's an interesting setup because it means that Lucy, who's kind of the good karma protagonist, the good karma main character of the series. I can't remember who said it, but I did see someone say that basically Lucy is the good karma playthrough, Maximus is the neutral karma playthrough, and the girl's the bad karma playthrough. And I really like that idea. I think it makes a lot of sense. But it sets Lucy up to be, a really good Fallout protagonist, because she comes from a vault, she's got absolutely no experience of the wasteland, and she's been thrown into this chaotic, unstructured society that doesn't care about other people. And, she has this real kind of fish out of water experience. And she grew up believing that Vault-Tec were the good guys and they were going to save America. But she unfortunately learns the hard way that this just isn't true. And so does her brother in a different way. Norm definitely has a high intelligence stat, and he wasted little time investigating and learning the truth once he found the dead bodies in Vault 32. So I'm quite intrigued to see what's going to happen to Norm come season 2. I'm intrigued to see what's going to happen, because we saw at the very end, just like there in the distance, that Hank was on his way heading towards Vegas. So we know something's happened, and we know that he's coming here, whether he's coming here for Mr. House, which is a possibility, or he's coming here for another purpose. It's hard to say, but we know that, from the ending, that this is where Hank was heading. So I'd be really intrigued to see what's going to happen. Is Bud the Roomba brain going to get the better of Norm, or is Norm going to be able to escape Vault 31? And what's he going to do with the information that he's got? Is he going to lead a revolution? Is he going to do something sneakier? I'd be really, really intrigued, because Norm's definitely an intelligent young man, and I think he's got a lot of potential to do something interesting. And I do really, really like that. And then obviously we need to see Lucy come to terms with the information about her father, that he was not the good, upstanding overseer that she knew and loved, and that there was a side to him that was dark and that had no qualms about basically wiping out an entire civilization, because it's not what suited him and what suited his company and his employers. Because that's one of the conclusions that, if you take into account all of these vaults that we've explored and all of the things that we've seen from Vault-Tec across the games and across the other materials that we've got related to Fallout, Vault-Tec want a monopoly on the end of the world. That's their goal, is that they want to have a monopoly. They want to basically be in charge of everything. They've just decided that theirs is a better way than anybody else's, and that governments don't work and military doesn't work. So, war never changes, but Vault-Tec just want to be in charge of it all, and that's their ultimate goal. So they are putting everything into having that monopoly and taking charge of everything. So the fact that, while they were all underground in this vault, that there was an entire nation that grew up basically from, the tiny wee village of Shady Sands that you visit with the vault dweller, to the point where it spreads over here and into Nevada, and the NCR is getting bigger and bigger. But as it progressed, the corruption started with the Brahmin barons and bribes and political manoeuvring and all that kind of stuff that started up with the NCR. But the fact that there was this large thriving city, but it all happened without Vault-Tec's input, so that obviously couldn't be tolerated by Vault-Tec, so they had to get rid of it to wipe the slate clean once again, so that Vault-Tec can then be the heroes that nobody really asked for. And that to me is the gist of everything that we've seen from all the vaults, from all the experiments, which, they range from kind of silly to absolutely horrific, and there's no real care for the actual people that are paying the price for these things. There's no care for the fact that people are dying, or people are suffering horrific ways, enduring a lot of pain, all these kinds of things because of these crazy experiments, which was all just really to see how people would cope under different circumstances and how people would react to different situations. And it's really, really cruel what Vault-Tec have been doing, and everything was towards the goal of setting up a society that they wanted, that they had full control over, so that they could have a complete monopoly on everything, and that was always going to be the end goal. And I would say that from, the TV show and things, and from what we know of Mr. House, it wasn't something that he was entirely on board with. He was mainly interested in the fact that, he could license out some of his tech and some of his software to Vault-Tec to make himself a tidy sum of money. But he wasn't really as interested in controlling people's lives and, making decisions over who gets to live and who doesn't and all that kind of stuff. And when you talk to Mr. House in this game, you know that that's not what he's interested in. He just wants to keep the money rolling in to Vegas so that he can fund the projects that he's got in mind, and he can build what he wants to build, which is definitely better, I think, than what Vault-Tec have ever intended. But it'll be interesting to see how things shape out in season 2 of the TV show. I'm really looking forward to seeing that. I know that they are in the process of filming it, and the fact that we are most likely going to end up visiting, and this is actually exactly where that very end sequence where you see the trashed Securitrons and things is actually backtracks from here. So there's a big hole in that wall straight ahead, and you can see the Lucky 38 there and the sign, and this is where the camera pans back through, so it feels quite fitting to end this little video right here where the TV show ended. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes in season 2. I think visiting Vegas is going to be very interesting to see exactly what's happened, because we know that the NCR has basically fallen apart, and probably things were starting to go wrong even before Shady Sands got nuked. That there's probably, there's a lot of political issues going on in the NCR, which we know about because everybody in there doesn't shut up about it. So we know that there's more to it than just that. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see just where things go next in season 2. So let me know what you think. Have you watched the TV show? I mean, hopefully, I've just spoiled a lot of it if you haven't watched it, but if you've watched it, what did you think, and what do you think's going to happen next season? Would love to hear any thoughts and speculation on that, because I think it's going to be very, very interesting. And I think I'm definitely ready to see more, so hopefully it's not going to be too long that we have to wait before the next season comes out. But thanks very much for watching, thanks very much for listening. I hope you find this interesting, and I say there's not really much visual for these vaults without me taking clips from the TV show, but I think that's potentially got issues with copyright and whatnot, so I thought we'd just take a walk through the Mojave while we talk about it. And I think it's quite fitting to end it here because that's where the TV show ended as well, and it's going to set things up quite nicely for season 2. So that's me signing off for now, and I'll see you next time. Bye.